Get full access to RFR only on Patreon. Become a member of the RFR Patreon community to get more Rebel Force Radio. Bonus shows and content are available right now only at patreon.com/Rebel Force Radio.
Rebel force has penetrated the shield and landed on Endor.
This is where the fun begins.
A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away.
This is Rebel Force Radio.
Your source for the Force.
Star Wars news and commentary.
With Jason Swank and Jimmy Mack.
I've seen Star Wars 500 times. Star Wars #1.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe. I suggest we use it.
Now it's time for Rebel Force Radio.
We would be honored if you would join us.
I think we're going to do some unboxing in here. I got a package. Jimmy's got a package.
Yeah. Do some unboxing up in here.
Yeah, I hear that's a big thing now. It's been a big thing for a long time, but we haven't done that much on right here on Rebel Force Radio. Great to be back with you. This week's episode for June 28th, 2019. And we've got a jam-packed show, including, coming up in the second hour of the podcast, someone we haven't heard from in a long time, and we're just really happy to have him back on the podcast. Derryl DePriest, he's the former VP of Global Brand Management at Hasbro. He was the Star Wars brand team leader. He's going to be talking about his brand new book. It's a Kickstarter campaign that's already fully funded. This thing is unbelievable. The Star Wars Vintage Collection Archive Edition book. And as soon as I heard about it, I did two things. The first thing I did was I backed it. The second thing I did was I sent a text message to my good friend and yours from Chicago, Jimmy Mack.
Wow. Hey, Jason. Hey, Star Wars fans. Thanks for the smooth as silk intro. You really just slid right into that bad boy.
I did, didn't I?
That was really nice. That was very satisfying. Hey, I didn't come here by myself this week, though. We got riding shotgun in the RFR Chicago studio annex. Billy Mack.
Hey.
Yes.
How you guys doing?
Yes.
How you doing?
Oh.
Billy Mack is back.
Yeah, my favorite guest on the podcast.
Jason, I don't think we've talked since Celebration. Is that correct?
No.
Are you kidding
Well,
me?
no, wait a minute.
Have
we not?
Outside of text?
That can't be true.
I think
We
so.
talk almost every day via text, which is kind of nice.
Yes, Billy filled in for you the week you were out.
That's right.
For work reasons, and that's when Virtual Swank made his debut.
All right.
So,
Yes.
so that's why I'm confused that, I'm like, I know you guys were together at some point on the show. Well, virtually, you were. Thanks to Virtual Swank. Coming to Patreon members very soon as a ringtone.
I coming out of radio, one of the things we always talked about with like the morning show duos would be if one was just a laugh track for the other. So I see where I stand here. The Virtual Swank is just a laugh track for for Jimmy Mack.
No. It's a way of maintaining your presence on the show virtually on those weeks you're not available. Virtual Swank coming soon to Patreon members as a ringtone.
Oh, man, that will be really weird if I encounter somebody with that ringtone. That's going to be like... What is that? Is it Swank in there? It's going to be like that. That sounds like an auto unit.
Did I tell you guys, and I say this, Jim, you've been in radio for so long, you know exactly, and you've been with Wendy for a long time, and you've had these encounters, but I don't think I told you guys about running into a couple listeners at a flea market. Did I tell you about that?
No, not that I can recall.
And this happens to me all the time. If I do run into a listener, I always think I'm going to write down their name so I can say, hey, I ran into so-and-so. And I always forget. But I went to there's a flea market in our area, and my daughter is bit by the collecting bug, so she's out there looking for stuff. I'm out there looking for stuff, and all of a sudden, I'm walking there with my daughter and my brother and another friend, and I hear this person saying, "That's Jason Swank." No, that's Jason Swank. I'm like, oh God, what is this?
It's a creditors.
Yeah, right. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know if it was the IRS, the FBI, the mob. It could be any number. But no, it ended up being this a great listener and his wife or girlfriend, and they had a little dog they had this little shopping cart they were pushing around. They had a little dog there, and so they came up and they chatted, and what they said was, "I heard your voice. I heard your voice, and I thought it's got to be you." And so that's kind of like virtual swank, I guess. If people are going around with their ringtone of that, there's going to be people thinking that, I'm just hanging around, I guess.
Well, laughing. I mean, it all comes with the territory of the podcaster. We work in an audio format, so we don't get seen, but we do get heard out in public. So it happens. It happens.
Right. But it was great. It was great because my brother was there. And, a lot of times your family, they don't realize that, when you're doing something like this, that anybody listens.
Yeah.
Right.
Very, very key that your brother was there. That
was great.
You're cashing in those credits right there, man. Being
right. Like, see? Yeah. People listen to this podcast.
I told you, man.
Right. But anyway, all right. Yeah. So very, very exciting to have Derryl later coming on the program. But really, what I want to hear about is that there was a whirlwind trip by the Mack brothers to Mecca of Star Wars collecting, Rancho Obi-Wan.
Oh, yeah.
Jim, you've been there many, many times. I've had the pleasure of being there once with you, and we've talked about over the years, boy, it'd be great to have Bill come out there, and I wish like heck I was able to join you, but nonetheless, the two of you went out there. Bill got to see Rancho Obi-Wan for the very first time. So I'm curious to know, Bill, as a guy who had never been there, but clearly have heard all the stories from us on the show and from Jim, of course. Did it live up? I got to ask, when you see that unveiling and the way it unveils itself when you're on the tour, did it live up to the expectations?
Oh my God, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's incredible every step of the way. I mean, they start you out in a corridor where there's tons of original posters. I mean, that alone was pretty awesome. But that's before you get into the main big room or whatever. I mean, that it just, yeah. I mean,
don't forget the library too.
That's right, the library and the bathroom. You get it. There's a bathroom.
Oh, you're right. Of course, the bathroom. Now, I don't know how it was revealed to you. I mean, Jim, you go out there and
it was via tour. It was the Saturday morning tour with David, and this was the first time that I ever attended a Rancho Obi-Wan tour hosted by a docent. I had always taken the tours with Steve Sansweet hosting, so I was, I hate to say it, I was a little skeptical going into it. Will it live up to the Steve Sansweet tour? And it was immediately evident to me, as soon as the tour started, that David was a great host. He knew his way around the museum. He told great stories with a really dry and fun sense of humor. And the pacing of the tour was fantastic. He answered all the questions. He took time, and we had an incredibly great tour group. All Star Wars fans. Sometimes at Rancho Obi-Wan, you get casuals. You get people there who are just along with family members, or, people who just might not be as committed to visiting the Guinness Book of World Records, world's largest Star Wars collection, like we are, or like the people who listen to the show are. But this group that we were with, was a dozen, maybe 15 or so of the most hardcore Star Wars fans you could ever want to meet from all over the place. We met Steven from California, an RFR listener who stopped and said hi to us. And it was just really an incredible tour. And I was so happy to be there with Bill, too, because as you always do when you take someone to experience something that you're very fond of, you always see it through their eyes, and it gives you a different new perspective. And so it was a lot of fun for me to go with my little brother. And, go to the greatest place in the world for Star Wars fans to visit. There's that Galaxy's Edge thing, too. But I still maintain Rancho Obi-Wan is the greatest, most immersive, and really most passionate connection you can make to Star Wars as a fan.
Yeah, and the only criticism I have is that there wasn't a rewind button for the tour, because I'll tell you, I mean, some of this stuff, it just like you become so transfixed on certain items that the tour starts moving along, and it's like, oh crap, you missed a story or two, and it's like, they're all such good stories. That's the cool.
And you don't know what to look at first in there,
right? I mean, it is
every shelf.
I for anybody going there, that's just one thing to keep in mind is to. Everybody's going to enjoy it in their own way, but you do have to. It's probably more fun if you remind yourself to not get mesmerized by something that you see on a shelf.
So, what mesmerized you?
The film props are probably my favorite. I mean, I see those and I just get caught up in thinking about them actually being on the set and
Forlom's crotch.
Forlom's crotch, absolutely. That's in a glass case, so I wasted a lot of time trying to photograph that. I have to preserve Forlom's crotch.
Can you pass along a good picture of Forlom's crotch with your own reflection in the picture?
Yeah, with my dumbstruck face, like, wow, there it is. That's what I came there for. It was Forlom's crotch. But there were other little things that there were pieces of a Leia costume that I think was from the Boosh outfit. There's a cantina door. There's a.
Is it still there?
Yeah, I have a sneeze coming on.
Oh!
I'm sorry, it didn't come.
I picture Jim. I picture you guys in a Laurel and Hardy moment with Jim's finger under your nose.
Yeah, that's right. My hat going up in the air.
Right.
I'm sorry, but no. One of the greatest exhibits of the film stuff I thought was kind of towards the end. There's a big cabinet filled with Death Star film used pieces from both New Hope and Jedi, and there's probably, gosh, I don't know, 30 little pieces in there. Towers. Some are more detailed than others. There's these panels and tiles and stuff. It's so cool. So
you were really drawn to the screen use stuff. That's when you kind of lose yourself just thinking about the history of that object and what it's seen, what it's been through.
I think so. But, the great thing about that collection is that like any great collection, there's so many stories with them. I mean, there's a lot of custom stuff in there. I mean, you've got the boxed vintage Kenner stuff. Of course, that's always very impressive. But and here's a good one. Here's a personal highlight that I ran into in there. I found out after the tour that one of my own personal items is in that exhibit, which is the Yoda figurine that I painted when I was a kid, like in 1980. So
that came from you. Now, I know that there's a number of those.
There's a few of them, yeah.
The paint by number Yoda plastic.
That's it, yeah.
What is it? Statue? I don't know what you call
figurine.
it. Yeah,
I guess. I think it's called a figurine on the package, but yeah. So he's got a number of those, with an original one that's packaged still.
That's actually Anne's collection.
Oh, is it?
Yes, that's specifically her collection.
Oh, so that's what it was. See, because that was how it came up. Because I asked her afterward, I said, are you an artist? Because she was talking about something else that she was going to paint earlier. And she said, no, not really. And I said, were those your Yodas I saw in there? Did you actually paint those? And she goes, well, Jimmy gave me one of them. And I thought, oh, my God, that's mine. Yeah. And she seemed really thrilled by that. Of course, I was, too. So yeah, that was a feel good that I'm actually in that exhibit, to a certain degree.
That ended up in my hands when I was moving out of my parents' house. Well, actually, I had already moved out of my parents' house. And when you return for holidays and family get-togethers and stuff, your mom and dad usually have a box of your crap to take with you. Oh, we found this in a closet. We found this in the basement. This was in the crawl space. And it's a box of junk. And a lot of my stuff was Star Wars stuff. And so it ended up in a bag with a bunch of other things. And I had noticed on trips to Rancho Obi-Wan that Anne had stuff laid out there. So I brought the Yoda statue, and I left it on her desk after I'd been there for a few days. I didn't tell her I was going to leave it there, but just I was in her office right before I left, and I left it there. I think she texted me like an hour later while I was at the airport. She said, hey, thanks for adding to the collection. So on display with the Yoda statues is a Billy Mack original Yoda painted statue. It would be great if we could get a mold of those and produce a whole bunch of them and get some great Star Wars artists to paint them for charity, and they can be auctioned off like the Vader helmets and things of that nature.
I'd love that.
That would be pretty cool. I'll have to float that up the Ann Newman flagpole. Ann Newman, by the way, is the manager of Rancho Obi-Wan. And it's everyone's dream to meet a girl who has a Star Wars museum. And so our good friend Stu is out there also. And Stu Levy and Ann Newman actually live at the museum. And they raise chickens out there and collect Star Wars stuff and manage the whole thing with Steve and a bunch of great volunteers.
And they were great hosts, and they're great people. And, of course, they had the job of managing us, too, while we were out there.
We were moving some boxes.
Task.
We were moving some boxes, but that's what you do. You want to pitch in a hand, and even Billy was harvesting eggs from the chicken at one point.
I did,
all the chickens, I guess, not just the chicken.
I got a brown one.
Well, you're part of the family when you show up at Rancho Obi-Wan and they put you to work right away. And so I know you guys did some of the chicken duty, or also schlepping boxes around, all that kind
There's
of
chicken duty all over the place. Are you kidding me?
It's something else to go out there. I mean, in addition to the greatest collection, the biggest collection of Star Wars memorabilia in the world, you also have just this great family vibe. Steve, Bob, Ann, and Stu, and the kitten, the kitties, and the chickens, and all of that. It's such an awesome retreat, and really, really puts you in a good place. Bill, what was you mentioned the film use stuff? I know the one that really got to me was seeing that Vader, the Vader costume. It was I believe used in the filming of Empire Strikes Back, or many of the pieces and parts. That was one that I could just sort of sit there and stare at for a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, but you're a guy that, you go back to, the release of the first film and all the merchandise and toys and all of that. Was there something that, perhaps you had always wanted yourself and you finally saw it, in person there at Rancho Obi-Wan?
Well, geez, all that Kenner stuff. I mean, boxed up and carted, and I mean, that stuff just makes me drool. But I mean, there's other cool things like, I mean, you could see behind the rows. There's a lot of other stuff that isn't, on full display necessarily, but it's visible. And I saw like, behind one shelving area, they had there were shelves of like vintage Don Post masks, and they were still in their box, and you could see that Stormtrooper Vader, and I remember those being on shelves at like novelty stores and stuff when I was a kid. I mean, just every corner has something that it gets your collector's juices flowing.
Yes. It does, doesn't it?
And I come home and that's like the first thing I want to do. I mean, I started building a Lego X-Wing the other night. I didn't want it. I felt like I wanted to spend some time with the collection.
Yeah,
right.
Well,
it really reinvigates you.
It inspires.
Yeah. And some of those video games, too. I
was going to ask you about the pinball. Did Jimmy give you did he let you play any of the – because Jim sort of commandeered that whole area where the Star Wars pinball machines are. Did he let you play any of those?
Can't play like 9 machines at once, or 11 machines, however many.
You would if you could.
Yeah, I would. Yeah. Absolutely.
But
Were you playing some of those games?
Oh yeah. I did get hooked into the pinball. I probably spent most of my time playing those because I never played any of those machines that were in there. There was a very strange one that was from Australia, and then there was a newer original Trilogy one that had multiple levels and stuff. I mean they make them so complex now. So those were great, but they also had a vintage vector graphic Atari machine in there, and it was like in perfect shape. There's one out here at Galloping Ghost, but it's not quite as smooth. It's had a little bit more wear and tear than this one. This one was perfect. So I spent some...
Now, Jim, is that the one that you were talking about last week, where they're releasing that as sort of a mini cabinet?
Right.
For your home?
Right. It was announced at E3 that the Arcade 1-Up company, which replicates classic arcade cabinets at about 3/4 the size. They're about 4 feet high. When your typical arcade cabinet is about 6 feet high. Mm-hmm. So you're missing a couple feet there. But they do come with, you can purchase risers or sit on a stool or, put it on cinder blocks. I don't care what you do. But they are going to be putting out a limited edition Star Wars model this November. And it's going to feature the original Atari games, Star Wars vector graphics, Empire Strikes Back vector graphics, and the weird diagonal scrolling Return of the Jedi game that is extremely irritating, but yet challenging and Star Warsy. I'm okay at that game. I'm okay at that game. One of the funniest things was, man, I wish I hit my record on the iPhone for the first time I took Sam Witwer to the Galloping Ghost. Well, I didn't take him there. He and his brother met me there because I've been barking at those guys for the longest time to meet up with me there. And they did. And Sam talks while he plays, and he says the funniest crap. He does all that stuff on Twitch, and so he's used to giving color commentary to his video game as he's playing it. There's a lot of guys on YouTube who do it, but Sam's pretty damn funny. The stuff he was saying when he was playing that Return of the Jedi game was just cracking me up so much. So you got to check it out just to see the humor in it that Sam Witwer found in it when he was playing it. And it's a challenging but fun game. That happens this November. It's a limited edition. It's going to be about $500. And I have room cleared away in the Star Wars room waiting for it to arrive.
I was going to ask if you've got the corner near the outlet. You don't want to have happen like what happened to George Costanza with the Frogger machine. You're going to make sure
you know,
power supply.
I've had dreams.
High score.
I've had dreams like that, or nightmares, if you will.
So, Bill, as someone who just had their first experience with Rancho Obi-Wan, if there's people out there listening that are on the fence, they're thinking about wanting to do it, and they're just not 100% convinced. What do you say to them?
Well, I mean, absolutely, unconvince yourself and go there. I mean, it's a mecca. I mean, it's got there's probably not anything you can't think of that isn't in there. And I mean, the whole presentation of it is just awesome. Like Jim said, we had a great tour guide. I mean, the value of it, just in terms of length.
Well, it's like 3.5 hours, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's
well, and if you spend some time in the arcade afterwards, you could stretch it out even a little further. We were the last ones in there. I think they came with the crowbar or the the giant hook and got us out. That's so funny because he's like I don't know if people the last tour I was on.
It's Steve. It's Jimmy. Come on, out of the arcade.
And then you have, that back art room is pretty impressive too, isn't it, Bill? And how you get into it is pretty impressive too.
Should I say what that is?
Well, it is a big
reveal.
I don't want
to. There's an element there that I don't want to spoil.
Okay.
Because there are just so many points. I mean, just going in there. Like when he opens the door after you've seen the first phase of the tour and you go in there, it's just like, whoa, Star Wars explosion, overload. And
the man himself was there. So even though you had the docent volunteer giving the tour, Steve Sansweet,
yes.
I like to think that Steve just stands there like you think it's a statue, like he's a collectible of Steve Sansweet. And then he starts moving, and you realize it's the real Steve. But so he was there at the end of the tour.
No, it was cool. Yeah, he showed up at the end and greeted everyone and answered questions and chatted with people one-on-one and I mean it's such a great experience. From beginning to end. It's fascinating. I mean, the collection is fascinating. These aren't just Kenner toys. I mean, these are unique, one-of-a-kind items. They're items that, Steve has hunted down over the years. Like I say, they all have stories. I mean, they have the stuff that we all love, like the action figures and all that. But there are really the heart of that collection, to me, are the stories that are attached to so many of the items in there. As a Star Wars fan, it's just fascinating. And you'll find out stuff that you probably never knew. Like I never knew Forlam was named after... For love of money.
Oh, you didn't know that.
I had no. I mean, that's probably out there, right? But I just,
It is.
When you're looking at the crotch and you want to know more, these tidbits of information become very valuable. And it's just, Steve and Ann and Eric and Stuart, they're just everybody, they're just such good people and such welcoming, hosts and so generous and it's just a great experience. I mean, as a Star Wars fan, you owe it to yourself at least once, and it's a beautiful area. So,
I mean, what about the Jabba Jam?
Well, the Jabba Jam. Well, that was more of a private event. You got to pay extra for that.
What? All right. Well, tell us, what was the Jabba Jam?
Well, when we got there. We met up with Stu and Ann and had a nice dinner and made us a great dinner there, very welcoming. And Stu says, it was kind of funny because he just kind of casually mentioned, I got this, we got this Jabba's palace back here. I'm like, what is he talking about? He's like, I got a guitar back there, I got keyboards back there, and let's go play. And so me, Jim, and Stu went back there, and there's a room back there that I think they use for special events, and there's a big Jabba statue, and there's droids back there,
But I mean, it's a full size Jabba.
Yeah,
full size. I mean, it's a full size.
So you guys are like
throne.
You guys are jamming in front of this full size Jabba, so you're feeling like the Max Rebo band. Well, basically,
our audience was
Nana Tuta. Weren't we?
I was hearing
screaming those things at some point.
But we actually locked into some solid grooves there a few times.
Yeah, I was on guitar and vocals, and Stu was doing keys and vocals. And were you doing any singing, Jim? I don't think.
Sometimes
you were on bass, though.
I'm the bass. I was holding
down the bottom.
I was there. Yeah, I was in the dungeon.
Yeah, we probably played about 10 songs or so. So that was a great way to kick it off. We all kind of share similar music tastes, so that was a huge plus. There was a lot of music involved in this trip. It wasn't all just Star Wars. So what a great way to kick it off. And
then you had the tour in the morning, and
the tour was actually on the third day, right? Yeah, so we got there Thursday night, then we took the tour Saturday morning. So
there was some hiking involved.
Yeah.
We hiked Big Rock Ridge, which overlooks the former home of Lucasfilm Animation at Big Rock Ranch, which is now known as either Skywalker Vineyards or Skywalker Summit, because there is a big convention, a meeting area there for like corporate meetings, and there's a hotel there, and it's all very pish posh. Gone are the days of Captain Rex and Ahsoka Tano. Trust me, at this way. But I mean, that's where all that stuff happened, was at Big Rock Ranch. And now it's available for corporate retreats, and the vineyards are being operated out of there too. And I think George Lucas Educational Center. George owns that. It's George Lucas's property. He didn't sell that off to Disney. It's still George's dream. That's what he always wanted to achieve. His whole career was to build this filmmaker's retreat, and he built so much of it that now he's incorporating it into educational and corporate purposes and what have you. There's a whole hotel in there now. That's why I think they call it Summit, is because there's a hotel in there. But we were hiking up the trails and switchbacks all the way up to the summit at Big Rock Ridge there, and with the twin radio towers, and it's about almost 2,000 feet above sea level. And that's a real stretch for a couple of Illinois flatlanders like Billy Mack and myself. Yeah. But it was invigorating and awesome and amazing, and get in touch with nature and breathe the fresh air and just enjoy. And we did. There's nothing like Marin. George Lucas knew what he was doing when he built Skywalker Ranch and bought all that land out there in Marin. There is no place in the world like Marin on a sunny summer day, and you're hiking, and it's just amazing. So, So we did all that.
And the other big thing too, if you're an American Graffiti fan, Rancho Obi-Wan is in Petaluma, which is where they filmed that, and some other movies like Cujo and Basic Instinct and Peggy Sue Got Married.
Heroes.
Yeah, Heroes. We were talking about Heroes a lot. That was a Henry Winkler movie that came out in the 70s that co-starred a young Harrison Ford right before Star Wars. That was the movie he did before that. Oh, my gosh. Yeah. One of the first films made about returning Vietnam veterans, PTSD and stuff. Sally Field is in it. It's a pretty good movie. So that was filmed around there, and all very cool to see. That area, they're really big on kind of preserving the way things are, and they don't allow a ton of development. So it still is very recognizable from all those films, for the most part. And actually, I mean, I love being a big American Graffiti fan. I thought I started recognizing stuff right away. I thought that was so cool, and to see that the streets around there are, the same as they mentioned in the movie. You know, that's just kind of interesting stuff to me. So,
well, I know what the question that's on everybody's mind that's listening to this right now is. We know that like Mr. Smith goes to Washington, Billy Mack goes to Rancho Obi-Wan, but were you alone? Did you bring your little friend with you?
Well, my little friend.
Say hello to my little friend.
We all know who we're talking about. We're talking about Puppet Lando. Did you also manage to smuggle Puppet Lando into Rancho Obi-Wan?
He made a later flight, but he did get there. Better late than never. And so we had some time with Puppet Lando, and he got to check out the exhibit. So
he got a special tour.
He did
from Steve Sansweet himself this time.
Yep, and they broke bread, and there'll be some more coming on that soon.
Well, actually, you can check it all out right now. Puppet Lando goes to Rancho Obi-Wan, available now on the RFR YouTube channel, featuring Steve Sansweet and Puppet Lando going on a tour of Rancho Obi-Wan. You got to see it to believe it, because
you really do.
I'm speechless.
I think it was a big moment for Steve Sansweet. I think it was a big moment.
But Steve saw Puppet Lando's review of the barge, Jabba's sail barge, which is also available on the RFR YouTube channel. And Steve was so blown away by that he insisted we send an emergency ticket to Puppet Lando and fly him in for a special private Sunday tour of Rancho Obi-Wan. And of course,
Steve didn't try to keep Puppet Lando.
Well, we feared
the
that
ultimate collectible, right?
We feared that, so we had Mr. Sansweet sign some paperwork, actually, and we did present it to a notary. And it was all, it's all very up and up. And he understands the implications should he ever try to abduct Puppet Lando against Puppet Lando's will. I would love for Puppet Lando to find residence in Rancho Obi-Wan, but not right now. He has too much work to do. There is too much of the world for Puppet Lando to see right now before he will eventually settle in Rancho Obi-Wan. I firmly believe that.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yes, as long as he's under lock and key in a glass case. Maybe we might encase him in lucite or something, so no one could ever use him for anything other than the true journey that he's on right now. And so, meeting Steve Sansweet and touring Rancho Obi-Wan, you got to see it to believe it. It's available now on the RFR YouTube channel. Do we have a highlight? I think
we do.
I think we do. Okay, great.
Let's listen to it right here.
Now that's one beautiful piece of drinkware. I remember back in 1980, one of my favorite activities was to stop by the local Burger King for a refreshment.
What kind of refreshment did you drink?
Well, Colt 45, of course. I usually had to go next door to the Burger King,
Well, this is a Bespin City glass, so Billy D. Lando figures prominently in this one.
Attention. This is Lando Calrissian. Steve Sansweet drinks out of my glass.
Like I said, we got to see it to believe it. But it sounds pretty funny too.
Yeah, it's fantastic. All right, well, let's dip into the Rebel Force Radio mailbag here. We got a voicemail. This is Ed from Minneapolis. Let's see. Take it away, Ed.
Hey, guys. Love the show. Ed from Minneapolis. Second time calling because I feel like you guys keep missing this one point. We keep talking about Luke. Listen to the show from today. Keep talking about Luke being, a Force ghost. Is he not a Force ghost? How does he appear? how does he appear when he's at Crate? How does he appear otherwise? Remember that in Rebels, while Yoda is still alive, Yoda appears in the Jedi Temple to Ahsoka. Yoda appears to Ezra. Yoda also appears, remember, in the whole time vortex area as well. He appears there too.
Yes.
So it's not to say that Luke couldn't be appearing in different places while still being technically alive somewhere. So, and being able to move around. So I think we missed that whole part that the Jedi have now shown that they're able to, while they're alive, appear somewhere else and still survive. Mm-hmm. Love the show.
Okay. Well, the big question is, where do you disappear to? I mean,
I was going to say is that you seemed like you were really getting what Ed was throwing down there.
Yeah. I like it. I like what he's saying. It is something to say Luke didn't die. There's still an opening for him to make an appearance in Episode 9. And, well, we certainly know he is going to be making an appearance, but how? Is he going to appear as a Force ghost? Will he be reincarnated, or was he never dead to begin with?
But there are two different factors here, though. There's the idea of appearing someplace else while you're still alive, projecting yourself, I think is the popular term that's used. There's that, and then there's also the other thing we saw, which was Luke's physical body disappearing. I don't think we've ever seen a Jedi do that unless they were dying. So,
right.
I don't
Yoda,
know. I mean, where else?
Ben?
Did he go to a Jedi retreat for a little while? But we've never seen the physical form disappear.
Maybe he was beaming off to someplace else.
So yeah, I mean that's true that we've seen Jedi, I guess project themselves, but we've never seen one. We've never seen their physical form disappear like that unless they were dying.
Because Luke was clearly projecting himself from Mack 2. Yoda was clearly projecting himself from Dagobah. I say clearly, but that's what it appeared when he was appearing before Ezra. But we don't necessarily know if I
get what he's saying that we haven't, that we have seen Jedi do that and survive. So it doesn't always follow that would kill them. I mean, I get that point, but
there's loopholes, there's openings. Yeah. This is fiction.
Oh, sure,
they can spin it in any direction they want to, and I welcome it. I heard a rumor.
Are you guys
Should we do a spoiler report or a spoiler thing? Should we
on this one?
Yeah.
All right. Let's do a spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert!
All right, so my source, who heard it from their source, who may be a source or not, but they said, they report to me that the moment when Luke throws that saber over his shoulder in Episode 8 does get addressed in Episode 9. And do you want to hear how?
Yes.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Rey is training. She's training with Luke's lightsaber, Anakin's lightsaber. She's using it and training and gets frustrated and throws the saber, like chucks it over her shoulder. And you see a hand grab the saber in the air. And it pans out and it's Luke. And he says, "That's no way to treat a lightsaber."
Yeah, and the crowd goes
wild. And the crowd goes wild. Well, I hope so.
Yeah. It would be.
Well, it would be.
Wow. Okay, so this is reports of a moment that we'll see in Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, it's just a rumor. I don't know if it's been reported online or what. I really don't follow the spoilers online. I don't look at Reddit, and I don't look at really many Star Wars websites outside of Jedi News. I still look at TFN. Mm-hmm. And I think that's about it. I really don't dive. And then you know what? I get a lot of my Star Wars news by the Apple News aggregator. When you punch in Star Wars, it presents you with all these stories on your iPad every day. And a lot of the sources they cherry pick from are questionable at best. And many of them I've had to filter out of my feed. But some of them I like. And
how about the Associated Press?
Oh, I follow. Well, I obviously follow the major news sources for all news, Star Wars.
How about this? We've got a clip here. This is Mark Hamill. He's on the red carpet for the premiere of the Child's Play remake, where he does the voice of the Chucky doll.
Yes.
And of course, you got Mark Hamill on the red carpet. You're going to ask him about Star Wars. So this is Mark Hamill on his Force Ghost curtain call. So this might answer some questions.
Is this really, 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 really going to be your last Star Wars appearance?
I sure hope so.
Why?
Well, because, I had closure in the last one. The fact that I'm involved in any capacity is only because of that peculiar aspect of the Star Wars mythology where if you're a Jedi, you get to come back and make a curtain call as a Force Ghost.
All right. Okay. So that seems to be an admission of some sort that he is going to be a Force Ghost in this. And, look, Mark knows how to troll.
He does.
But we also know that Mark knows how to step off and, tell the fans and the truth.
Yeah.
And if that's the truth, this was a little heartbreaking for me, honestly, because Mark has been so enthusiastic, and I don't doubt that that his enthusiasm for Star Wars fans has wavered. I don't think that's the case at all. I think he will always consider, as he says many times, Star Wars fans are like family to him. We've kept the legacy alive. We've never faltered. We've never wavered. He's, to us, he's the Beatles to him. Mark has said, I don't understand. I didn't understand fandom until I realized that, people feel about Star Wars the way I feel about the Beatles and things like that. So he gets it from that aspect. But what is sad to me is that his enthusiasm for being Luke Skywalker in terms of continuing his adventures, based on this clip, seems to have kind of petered out a little bit. And
ever since the notion of Mark Hamill returning to Star Wars for Episode 7 was even brought up, ever since the announcement of his casting was made official, he has made it very clear that when he was approached, he felt skeptical.
I was terrified. I thought, look, why mess with the success? We're never going to catch lightning in a bottle again. We had a beginning, a middle, and an end. Let's let the memories suffice. And I said, you know what? My out is that Harrison's never going to do this. So I said to my wife, as soon as Harrison turns it down, I probably won't, but it'll at least give me an out. And then Harrison said yes. I turned to my wife and said, well, I just got drafted.
He exposed a fear that it could be ruining the legacy of Star Wars. Or maybe not ruining, but at least causing a little bit of damage. Again, strong words to use.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, I know exactly what you mean.
Or how about friction with the legacy?
Yeah, sure.
It might cause some friction with the legacy. That's a good way to put it, I think.
Right. I mean, if your encore isn't better than your last number, why are you doing an encore?
And I think Mark was airing those concerns. Mark was airing concerns, and Mark is always a straight shooter, and he's always one who just says what he feels sometimes without a filter. And so he was airing his reservations about reuniting all this time later to undo the perfect bow that wrapped up the story with Return of the Jedi. It might cause friction to the legacy, is the message he was sending. And so I find this very consistent with his feels about returning to Luke. And I think it does really illustrate kind of a sort of blasé feeling he might be experiencing right now, because I think he had always been under the assumption that Luke's return in Star Wars would be something worthy of grandiose celebration. We're talking Yub Nub times 1,000, and worthy of the legacy that had been built up via fan equity over 30 years, and the fictional equity. Luke was always very much of a messenger of optimism and hope and consistency and reliability. And when I hear Mark talk like this, I think he's walking away with a different taste in his mouth about the character.
Well, and two, how much of the weariness is also tied into the fact that, he clearly was looking forward to getting back with his two acting friends, Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher. And now, Carrie's gone. They killed off Han Solo. I remember at the very beginning he was saying, I wouldn't do it unless the other two signed on. Yeah. So obviously that was, and he's commented since, about what could have been. I'm sure that weighs on the guy. Now, if they do close the chapter on Luke in this next movie in a way that generates a lot of fan excitement, I'm sure that will light a spark for him again. But I can't really blame him for feeling a little bit of that way at this point. There is that. Look, we can have our opinions on the movies, and we've talked about good and bad, and whatever. There's a lot of that, but it's just there is those questions of there's. I'm sure he's missing some fulfillment in terms of what he might have thought was going to happen. I know I'm sure he probably was looking forward to the three of them being together. Mm-hmm. The guy's only human.
Of course.
And he's so good with the press. He's always great to listen to, and this, I saw this story popping up over the weekend while I was in California, and it was like, Mark Hamill disowns Star Wars. He's so glad to be through with it. It's like, okay, come on, let's not go crazy. That's not what he said. But I'm sure, at this point, the last movie, I'm sure he accepted the death of his character, the way it was written, and came to terms with that. And now he comes back. I can imagine he wants that to be. He wants a satisfying conclusion to Luke, so I think it's only normal for him to feel some of that weariness that we're detecting in this soundbite.
I say we give him his own Disney Plus TV series. I want to see the Adventures of Luke Skywalker featuring Mark Hamill. I want to see him trying to rebuild the Jedi Order. I want to see the betrayal of Kylo Ren. I want to see all that stuff. Let's do that. Jim, you mentioned, I don't think it was on this last show, but fairly recently that some of the most interesting parts of the sequel trilogy all happened off screen.
Yeah, that is unfortunate, isn't it? It's the real moments that we want to see seem to be left all mysteriously off screen, and it's that mystery box thing. I wish there would just be a more straightforward story being told. I think we're going to get that in episode 9. I don't think there's wiggle room to go off into some weird mystery box J.J. Abrams BS that doesn't. The only thing it does is distract people. Who's Snoke? How did Maz get the lightsaber? Who are Rey's parents? Stuff like that is really, when you think about it, at the end of the day, these aren't questions we should be really dicking around with by episode 9. Okay? This is all just like a bunch of smoke that's distracting us from the real story at hand. It really is, man. And so I hope they get down and dirty and stop with these manufactured mysteries that JJ set into play that he's very famous for, and get down and dirty and start telling us a real story about real people in the Star Wars universe going through reality for them.
Yeah.
Because that's what why I always felt connected to Luke, and to a degree Anakin and Obi-Wan Kenobi, both Ewan and Ben. Mm-hmm. Or I should say Ewan and Alec, if I want to put them on a teeter-totter seesaw. So that's just, I want to get down and dirty with the mythology and stop all the guessing games and stuff. It's starting to feel gimmicky to me at this point. I'm sorry, man, but it just is. It just is. The Luke, I am your father thing kept us guessing, sure, I guess, between Empire and Jedi, but the proof was in the pudding. He was telling the truth the whole time.
He was telling the truth. And that's an interesting parallel to what seems to be one of the most paramount questions as we go into Episode 9 is, was Kylo Ren telling Rey the truth about her lineage, about her parents? Is that the I am your father moment of the sequel trilogy? And we're left to speculate between Episodes 8 and 9. Is he telling the truth?
Well,
are we going to find out that
he does lie, though. He does, because he tells Hux that the girl killed Snoke. That's not true. I've heard some people say he never lies, but he does.
Well, something to also consider too is
I read in a novel that Rey can
who's this?
She can implant memories. She can create reality. So, like when Kylo snapped out of it, Rey had implanted the memory of her killing Snoke. I don't know why she do that though, but she did it.
Is that a real theory?
Come on, man, out with it. Is it or isn't it?
You can find me on Twitter.
Hey, no, look, you're dodging. You're dodging.
Fine. If we're going to talk about theories, there's a theory that got some play over the weekend, and that is that Rey could be a clone of Leia, which would potentially explain the unexplainable, otherwise, connection that Rey and Leia have, even more so than Leia and Chewie. Here you've got the death of Han Solo. You got Chewie getting off the Falcon and blowing right past Leia, no connection at all, even though they lost the person they share as their most closest friend, companion, what have you.
See, J.J. Abrams has publicly admitted to being a mistake.
Yes. Oh, yeah. And it's like,
maybe
sir,
mistake is a strong... An oversight.
No, he did.
An
oversight. I don't know what word he used, but it was an F-up. Right? Let's call it what it was. It was a total F-up.
Right.
But this could explain, perhaps, the fact that there's a connection there. That, and there's been talk about, is she a backup copy, a clone of the Emperor? What's going on there? What do you guys think? Let's just throw it out there. Will there be any mention, any reference at all to cloning as it relates to Rey's character or history? What do you guys think? Is that possible? You don't have to say what clone or clone of what, but is there any possibility that Rey's backstory is going to be explained with clone?
Nah. I don't think so.
Now, Bill says no.
I don't
Jim?
see the point. They're gonna that requires them to explain more than I think they want to spend film time on it. You know? I mean, seriously, how much do you want to delve into that topic? Besides, what is a clone? Aren't they supposed to look like their whatever they're cloning. I mean, she doesn't look like Leia.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
The term is template, clone template. Okay, I'd like to take over right now. Okay, listen. Here's what's going on. It's obvious she's a. Oh, listen, I'm not telling jokes here, man. So why don't you shut your mouth and take some notes, okay?
Okay.
All
right, Ray Romano.
So, I get that sometimes. They say, hey, everyone loves Raymond, but they don't love you. So what happened here is, remember the scene in the original Star Wars 1977, A New Hope, episode 4? The scene when Vader is interrogating Leia, and the interrogator droid comes floating in there, it's a Dr. Ball, Dr. Ball, some people say. And so he comes floating in there, he goes,
We remember,
Check it, shut up, check it. I don't mean to get aggressive, but I want to get this off my chest. So, they zoom in on that hypodermic needle. What's the significance of that? It's not to torture Leia, no. It's to take her DNA samples and take them from her and deliver it directly to the Emperor so he can clone her. Yes. But he didn't, what? They got a bad sample, so they ended up with Rey.
Wow. Well, you picked up on the clues, my man.
Of course.
Either
that or
that's incredible.
No, true. And either that or they went into I'm so excited about that.
You're getting really excited. I know.
You're having some breakthroughs here, man.
Come on, chill. They went into the detention cell AA-23, and they extracted hair from her star puffs in her sleep, and used the DNA samples from her hair to clone her, and they got Rey. But not a clone, because Rey doesn't have the star puffs, so it doesn't
so
really...
what you're saying is Rey's mom and dad are a couple of star puffs?
Wow, from a certain point of view.
Okay. All right. I don't know if that's...
No, I'm back. Oh, I don't know what just happened to me. I think my inner nerd is just exploding like acne and taking over my entire personality. So I promise that will never happen again. Just like I promise Natalie Portman will never call me again.
As the phone rings?
No, it's...
Oh, okay. All right, okay.
Not this week.
Hey, you know what? We got Derryl DePriest. He's coming up here in the cantina. But before we do, as I teased at the top of the show, Jimmy Mack and myself, we both received care packages all the way from Galaxy's Edge, I believe, is where these are from. Our good pal, Max Sparky, David Sparks, sent us each a care package. Now, I know a few things that are in mine. I haven't opened this up yet. I wanted to do it on the show. Jim, you have no idea what's inside yours.
No, absolutely no clue. It showed up on my doorstep today, and I saw the name on it, so I knew I should put it aside and open it during the show. But I'm very excited because Max Sparky, David, he gave us an incredible review of Galaxy's Edge. I know he's been haunting that area.
He's been there at least once a week, sometimes twice a week.
He's like the ghost of Ben Kenobi, man. He's all over. He just pops up. There he is, So he's really living it up, really living the Star Wars dream there by going to Galaxy's Edge so many times. I look forward to, maybe I can meet up with him. I'm going there in a few weeks, so.
Yeah, he's sort of cracked the code. He's got this gear that he wears, and it's sort of a cross between cosplay and street clothes. He gets the stuff from REI, so he's got like a shirt, a vest, and these pants. He looks like a real Outlander. In fact, today he was sporting like some sort of scarf that you might wear in like a desert planet.
Right.
But
he's not cosplaying. Let's just make that clear.
No.
He is definitely not over the age of 14 cosplaying at Galaxy's Edge.
No,
please, security guards, keep your hands off of poor Max Sparky.
But what he did say is that because he has these clothes that sort of evoke the spirit of the Star Wars universe, that the cast members there at Galaxy's Edge have a lot of fun with him. Mm-hmm. He's always getting harassed by stormtroopers and various cast members. In fact, he was talking about a stormtrooper, full geared up stormtrooper cast member there at Galaxy's Edge, walking up to a guy who was clearly from the 501st wearing one of their bowling shirts. Those guys.
Oh, yeah, the bowling shirts.
Yeah, oh, yeah. And so the stormtrooper comes up.
I see that more than I see the armor now. I swear to God.
That's true. Well, they're all getting a little older, these guys.
The armor doesn't really stretch like the waistline as the waistline grows.
Like the bowling shirts,
So that's the late phase of the stormtrooper.
That's a close in retirement.
Kind of a regular guy look.
Oh, the regular guy look for the troopers, yeah.
But the stormtrooper comes up to this dude wearing the 501st bowling shirt and is like, "Hey, I know you. We met at the Imperial Recruitment Center," or something like that. So he sees a guy in the 501st, and he's going to go up to him and harass him a little bit. And then there was another guy. He was wearing a T-shirt with Han Solo on it. Chewie comes out of nowhere, points at the shirt, and then just starts like bear hugging the guy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Chewie.
So I think one of the keys to having some great interaction with the cast members is to wear some Star Wars gear. Wear something with your favorite character on it,
like Matt, the radar technician from. Well, no,
or that guy. Man, that sounds like Ray Romano. But there are rules. You can't. There are no holsters. No blasters, no holsters. No full-length
no
ropes.
blasters. Do they do that if you actually walked in with
that.
one?
Yeah, no, I think it's Homeland Security actually tackles you.
Yeah, you get tased.
Rubs your face in the dirt. Yeah. You get tased, and then you sound like a Wookiee. You're like,
oh, we've heard that before. We actually have audio of Wookiees or people getting tased, and then they sound like a Wookiee. No, they sound like a Wookiee while they're taking the electrical voltage into their system.
Yeah, so it's all, got to keep it in universe. All right, so we've got these boxes. So, Jim, I want you to go first.
Oh.
Because I know a couple of things that are in mine. So I want you to go first.
A couple
Unbox.
of things. I thought it was one thing. All right, this is the tissue. So I got that here. And what? It's like a bathtub toy or something. It's a Puffer Pig! Puffer Pig!
Oh, my God.
In this episode.
That's not a Puffer Pig.
It is a Puffer Pig. What the hell do you think this is?
Well, it is puffy and piggish, but
Bill,
isn't Puffer Pig?
Bill's such a pessimist. That's not a Puffer Pig. This is
listen, I know my Puffer Pigs.
You don't know
Wait, isn't the did you guys used to call him Cyberdoodle or something?
No, Cyberdoodle. You're thinking of Hogsquaddle.
Hogsquaddle. Okay, that's not a Puffer Pig.
This is a Puffer Pig.
What Jimmy has is a Puffer Pig.
Behold the Puffer Pig.
Let's take it easy.
Large.
I believe you. It's a Puffer Pig.
It's a large. It's a big juicy one.
You didn't squeeze him.
Crap. Give me him. He makes sounds. He makes sounds. Check it. This thing's awesome. Oh, how dangerous it is for me to have this. Because I got this note from Max Sparky. He says, Jimmy, I thought your podcast studio may need a co-pilot. Holy crap. You know how dangerous this is for me to have this with a microphone close by?
So Puffer Pig is now in every episode, at least of Rebel Force Radio.
Oh, good. We can get, commentary from the Puffer Pig during the show. We could be like, hey, Puffer Pig, Ray's parents, what do you think? Or,
sound. Oh, my God.
That's a Puffer Pig.
Yeah. Sounds like a human being. It's so crazy.
We might have to get musical with this thing and record the Puffer Pig theme. It's like your Green Acres.
Now there is
Green Acres.
There is a Lando connection. Is there not a Lando connection to Puffer Pig? There was Puffer Pig made his debut on Rebels. Lando was smuggling Puffer Pigs, right?
Oh, was that that Idiots Array episode? Was that it?
So maybe
he was in a couple.
Maybe Puppet Lando will have a little cohort for his next adventure.
It's like Arnold the Pig.
Arnold the Pig.
Well, the Star Wars version, yeah.
All right,
that was a smart pig.
All right, well, I'm opening up my package here, and right away, I see. What do we got here? Here, this is a bag that can only be procured there at. Oh wow. Marvel's issue #1 of the Star Wars Galaxy's Edge comic, which is fantastic. Has Han Solo walked into the biggest job of his career or the biggest trap of his life? So this is sort of setting the stage. I've got, and there's 2 different covers. There's one of Han and Chewie walking, just getting out of the Falcon and then walking through. They're on Batuu. This is so cool. And then there's another cover, which is just sort of got this nice shot of the Falcon in the background and some of the great architecture there about Batuu. But that's the variant edition. So the Star Wars Galaxy's Edge Marvel comic book. That is awesome. So thank you for that. Now, I did send our pal Max Sparky on a mission because there were some things that I specifically wanted. Let's see what we. Oh, wait a minute. What do we have here? Oh, so you know about the astromech droids that are exclusive to the Star Wars parks.
Yes.
So there was one. Now, my favorite candy in the whole world is candy corn. And so
really?
I love this one. I love candy corn.
Wow, man. You could pull 1,000 people and 999 of them would say, candy corn sucks.
Well, I love candy corn, but it's got to be the legit stuff. None of this
the real deal.
The real orange, yellow, white,
waxy, flavorless candy.
Stuff.
Yes.
Yeah. It's quite flavorful, Bill. It's quite flavorful.
Oh my God.
Anyway, so this is
stuff
our
away by the handful every Halloween.
Well, you could have given it to me. All right, so this is R4 Boo 18. So it's an astromech droid that is this is a 3 3/4 inch scale figure.
That's still available, huh?
Yeah,
because I miss that one. I need that one.
And then there's R4 H18, which is this is very cool. This is another astromech droid. He's a bartender droid from Canto Bight. I don't know if he got any screen time or not, but this is great. So I love those. So I kind of started inadvertently. I ended up with one, and then I realized I had to have them all. So David sent me those. That's great. And then here we go.
I'm a junkie for all those astromechs they have at Disney and with the Build-A-Droid and all those exclusive 3 3/4 inch astromechs. I love those. What do you get? What else did you get with your candy
in universe? Corn? I got a real Japor snippet necklace. I mean, this is something.
Oh God! Now, I don't know about David.
Something to remember him by.
I know. I wonder if Deb would have anything to say about that. Well, hey, this
is a real Japor snippet, and I got to tell you, the quality. We've talked about this with the lightsabers. What we're hearing about the lightsabers at Galaxy's Edge, all this in-universe stuff. The quality is really good.
Oh,
I don't know about your pig.
Yeah.
We got to handle a Galaxy's Edge lightsaber over the weekend.
Yeah, Steve.
Yeah, it was heavy.
When Steve, he was on the show a few weeks ago, and Steve Sansweet told us about his visit to Galaxy's Edge and how he experienced the lightsaber building deal that goes on at Savvy's workshop. And we actually got to hold the saber, and the weight and quality of this thing is easily worth the $200 they're asking for it. This is no plastic Hasbro lightsaber. This is it's a work of art. It really is.
Quality replica item. I mean, considering that these things used to cost you, just for the hilt, a replica hilt of any quality would cost you $300 or $400. Mm-hmm. So for $100 on that, and then another $100 gets you the tube and the kyber crystal. So I also have some of the nice bags. They give you these branded Star Wars Galaxy's Edge bags, reusable shopping bags that I got here. But this is what I sent him out for these. I had no idea if he'd be able to find them, and it's clear that he did. So there's a number of Black Series box sets that have been, there's 4 of them as a matter of fact, and I'm really excited about these. These are the 6-inch Black Series figures, and there's 4 different box sets. Each one has an exclusive figure. This one I'm very excited about. This is called Smuggler's Run. We've got Chewbacca, a Batu Ray, some Porgs, and the one that I really, really wanted, finally, a 6-inch scaled Black Series Hondo Anaka.
Yay!
Great looking figure. Oh, wow. This is really cool. I'll take some pics tonight, and we'll get them posted up.
Yeah.
So
and your special Japor snippet little memento, too.
Yeah, for
which
sure.
I believe is more than just a little souvenir, but... sort of a message being sent to you. So, hey, Swank, ball's in your court.
Yep. All right, so on to box set number 2. This is great. This is the First Order box set. So I get a Mountain Trooper, a Kylo Ren. But this is really cool. This is from Star Wars Resistance, a 6-inch Black Series scale version of Commander Pyre. And wow, what a cool-looking figure. Of course, the gold-plated Stormtrooper Commander Pyre from Resistance, and there's also.
Oh my God! What, he send you a crate of shit? I just got the puffer thing.
Okay.
Man.
No, these I said, look, if you find these, I will send you the money. This was not a gift because these are pricey. But there's also, I love this. I'm not aware of there having been a mouse droid in the 6-inch Black Series scale before. So this comes with the mouse droid. That's awesome. We've got 2 more here. This is the what's this called? Oh, this is the droids, and this is a little bit. Here we go. Okay, so we've got BB-8. R2-D2, which is a really difficult figure on the 6-inch Black Series scale to find, a C-3PO, and DJ R3X. Yeah, so from Star Tours and now in Galaxy's Edge.
6-inch?
Yep, 6-inch.
Huh.
A 6-inch scale DJ R3X, more commonly known as Rex.
Pee Wee Herman.
Absolutely.
Paul Rubens.
Yep, and he's DJing there in the... in Olga's Cantina.
Hey!
So there you go. Wow, what a great care package. So thank you, David, for picking those up. And I told him because he's spending so much time out there, he's kind of really becoming quite the expert in all the do's and the don'ts. And if you want to have some great experiences with some of the cast members, some things you can do to ensure that they'll notice you. And so he's going to be quite the tour guide, Jim. So if you're going out next month, I think he might be able to show you around Batu there.
Hey, that's pretty cool.
So big thanks to David. All right, So, without further ado, we teased this at the beginning of the show. We've got a great guy when it comes to Star Wars collectors, someone who's really been in the trenches and fighting for the figures that we want and trying to balance that with the figures that will actually move the toys off the pegs. He's semi-retired now. He's an author. He's a legend when it comes to the Star Wars action figure line. We're going to go in the cantina with Derryl DePriest.
Star Wars Cantina.
Where are you going, Master? For a drink.
Sorry about the mess. You will never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy. We must be cautious.
Hi, Derryl. Welcome to Rebel Force Radio. We have been wanting to talk to you, sir.
Well, good. Thanks.
This is Jimmy Mack here, and with Jason.
Hey.
Of course.
Yeah.
And we've met you before.
Yeah, I went on with you guys. I was probably in Orlando.
Yeah.
It's a number of years ago, but
like 2010.
I remember it. Yeah, exactly. That was fun.
And oddly enough, you know what's funny? It's kind of come full circle here, because when you joined us at Star Wars Celebration, what was that, 5, you were rolling out the vintage collection for the very first time, if I remember.
Oh, wow. That's right. And did we was our exclusive the reversed
the Forlom
and Zuckuss, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we reversed those. Yeah. I remember that show. That's outstanding.
Those are great figures.
They're really great figures. You know, they're so good. In fact, you should probably do a book.
I'd like to.
Yeah, according to Kickstarter, it looks like that book is definitely going to happen. I'm going to say, in full disclosure, I backed it as soon as I saw it. And I texted Jim and I said, "Hey, this is really cool. Take a look at this." And I said, "We haven't talked to Derryl in a long time, so hopefully he'll jump on with us and tell us about this project." And,
yeah, absolutely, be happy to.
Yeah, well, so for those who may not know, Derryl DePriest is the former VP of Global Brand Management at Hasbro and was the Star Wars brand team leader. For how long, Derryl, did you oversee the Star Wars brand at Hasbro?
For 10 years, I was in charge of global product development and marketing. It's what at Hasbro they call a global brand team leader. Mm-hmm. So 10 years, and pretty much my arc was I came in right at the as we were getting ready to launch Episode 3. So I came onto the brand team in October of 2004. And by that point, the Episode 3 product line pretty much had been put to bed. And my job was then to spearhead development for everything that would follow Episode 3, the film. So I wasn't doing marketing, but I was overseeing the product development effort. And quickly, we realized that we had just a phenomenon on our hands. And so I got ready with the team, including Mark Boudreau, Brian Parrish, some of the other legendary designers who were there. We got ready a plan in case we were successful. We were going to need more basic figures and more newness. So they created the first of what I became infamous for, which is like a repaint wave, high quality repaint wave. Yeah. But and that was really the first, and we actually needed it because sales started taking off, so we put that into production. So that was kind of my first arc there, and then I was responsible for delivering everything post the EP3 product line. So Star Wars Transformers and Unleashed and Galactic Heroes and new basic figure lines like the Anniversary Collection. So all that. And then I kind of finished my 10-year arc after meeting with the team to hear the Episode 7 story, getting to hear it directly from, the director himself. And and then coming back with the team and putting the product line, into production and put it to bed. And then that finished my arc there. And then at that point, I said, this is a good 10-year run, and it's time for a change. So I came back onto what's called the Hasbro universe of brands. So a combined universe effort to revive G.I. Joe and Micronauts and things like that. So that's what I had been doing for the last several years there at Hasbro.
And so you are still at Hasbro?
No, actually, we separated last fall, and since then has come the writing arc. So I always wanted to write books. My first book actually was a G.I. Joe book that came out in 1999. And that actually opened the door to go to Hasbro. So I started at Hasbro in 2001. And the book was very helpful because it was a testament to G.I. Joe and really the power of the original 12-inch G.I. Joe line. And I'm a collector. may not surprise people. I collect Star Wars, G.I. Joe, and a lot of other things. So my book was called The Collectible Gi Joe, and it was a very, very comprehensive, but it was also a very, loving tribute to the brand. And the folks at Hasbro, liked it, and I came in and they gave me the job to head up the brand.
Well, talk about full circle. So you started writing a book about your passion for the G.I. Joe brand. It got you a gig at Hasbro. You then moved on to Star Wars, and now after your time at Hasbro, you're writing a book about Star Wars.
That's right. That's right. And I loved writing. One of the greatest experiences of my life was working with my photographer collaborator, a guy. He's in San Francisco named Curtis Fukuda. And we did the book together back when I lived in San Jose, the G.I. Joe book. And it was just one of the greatest experiences of my life. Just, the process of creation is so awesome. And, we were so happy with the results that I always, when I went to Hasbro, I always wanted to get back into writing. But, and this is cautionary for anyone who's in the creative field or, and anticipating a career change, I didn't indicate. And my book did very, very well, and my publisher, Running Press, wanted to do more titles, and basically they asked me, so do you have another follow-up you want to do? And I had 2 books in mind. They said they both sound great, pick one and let's go. So basically I had 2 books lined up, additional G.I. Joe books. Then I got the job at Hasbro, and I made the critical mistake of in my zeal to join Hasbro, I didn't tell them that I had, 2 prior, book projects that I was gonna complete. And about a year later, after I started, because you start a new job and you're just fully immersed in that, and you kind of come up for air after a period of time. So I went up to the legal department and said, "Oh, by the way, I've got these 2 book deals, these 2 books on the, and a publisher lined up, and I'm going to do those." And they said, "No, you're not. You can't. You didn't pre-disclose those, and it's against Hasbro policy, really, to do that." So for the better part of 18 years, I tried to get that overturned, but I never could. So actually, I couldn't write. But now it has, to your point, come full circle. So now I can kind of get back to what I've always thought I would do, which is contribute to the field of collecting and fandom, which I love to do. So,
Derryl, I've heard legendary stories about your basement collection displays. Are these exaggerated or what? I hear you have Star Wars galore going all the way back. And G.I. Joe collection is downright jaw-dropping. Is this true? Are people exaggerating?
No, it's not an exaggeration. I've collected, G.I. Joe and Star Wars pretty much my whole life, I would say. And I'm what you say, well, my wife says is like the worst type of collector to marry, because I'm not only am I a loose completist army builder,
yes,
which means that when it comes to Star Wars, my troop building number is 8. So every unique trooper that has ever come out, I have to have a minimum of 8. If I really like them, I'll go to 16 or 24 or 36 or wait, is that mathematically correct? 32. So a multiple of 8, because that's what fits on these cabinets that I got. I was lucky to get some surplus cabinets from Hasbro. They needed to clear them out of their warehouse, and they're really nice. They were made for G.I. Joe, but these cabinets are phenomenal, and so they stack 8 deep with a commander in front. So kind of 8 is my number for troop building. Or like I said, at one time I had 100 crisp white vintage Kenner stormtroopers all in one giant formation, and they looked absolutely awesome. But I also am a packaging collector too when it comes to vintage. So both vintage Star Wars and Joe. I also like to collect packages and cards. So I'm like my wife says, I'm the worst because I like to have it all. But one thing I do is I focus. I love the 3 3/4 form for Star Wars, and because that was part of my childhood, that defined my childhood. Yes. And by extension, I like it for G.I. Joe as well, the Joe Cobra mythos. And I also collect 12-inch G.I. Joe, but I don't collect 12-inch Star Wars. I mean, I have a lot of the sideshow figures. I have a couple of, a few hot toys, but I'm careful not to go there because that's a rabbit hole that
man, that is one slippery slope. I just want to say before we continue with the interview, for those of you listening, go to Kickstarter.com if you haven't seen this. The links are all over the place. If you're following any of the major Star Wars fan sites, you'll see a link. I'm sure we'll also have one as part of our posts about this podcast. But go to Kickstarter.com and search for Star Wars Vintage Collection Archive Book and back this project. It's already funded, fully funded. They're at the process now of adding some of the stretch goals. So, Derryl, congratulations. It's awesome that not only did it succeed, but right now we're closing in on 3 times the original goal, which is just incredible.
Thank you very much. I mean, I really have to give a lot of credit to my 2 partners, D. Martin Myatt, and most people probably know D. Martin or Dave from his content and photography work on Rebel Scum and Cool Toy Review. He is one of my partners, along with Rich Alott, who was a marketing manager for Tamashii Nations and a longtime Star Wars fan. They really had an idea on how to put together a really premium, awesome book to archive, to talk about the vintage collection, and brought me in as the writer. So I think together we're just a great team, super passionate, and our skill sets really complement each other. So they're doing the photography and the layout and design, and I'm doing the writing and critiquing the design.
Well, I mean, Derryl, is there an aspect of this book, as Jimmy pointed out when we first met you face to face at Celebration 5? You were rolling out the vintage collection. Is this in some ways a bit of a memoir for you in terms of, you were there on the ground floor with the rollout of that line, so it's a pretty unique point of view. You're doing more than just sort of documenting these things. You know the history and the story behind the whole line.
That's right, and so in a way it is a memoir, because I have my time on Star Wars. I worked on a lot of brands at Hasbro, but I'd say my time on Star Wars is indelibly kind of burned in my brain, because it was so incredible, and working with the team out of Lucasfilm was an unimaginable experience to get to go out there and collaborate with those guys. And basically, especially if you think about the in-between years between Episode 3, which for a long time we thought was going to be the last Star Wars film, and then when Episode 7 came on the horizon, we collaborated with them to fill that space with some of what I think is the most amazing Star Wars action figure product that we've ever seen. And when I've gone back and kind of looked at, just the sheer number of, say, vehicles that we were able to make, good guy, bad guy, new to redo the tooling on classic vehicles just to make them bigger and better, like the Millennium Falcon, the AT-AT. Things like this. Plus, if you just look at all the droid ships that we created, it was an amazing time for sure.
Do you remember? I'm curious as to who it might have been, or who had the idea to say, what we should do? We should start packaging these figures in a vintage style, because I feel like you guys were the first. Other brands and other lines have done it. You guys were the first to do it. Was that something that was sort of always sort of cooking as an idea in the background, or how did that come about?
So it actually came about thanks to G.I. Joe, the vintage collection. So when I was over G.I. Joe, we created a line called the 40th anniversary line for 12-inch G.I. Joe, and it was launched in 2004. But within the company, we were showing it to other teams and the senior management teams at different management meetings. And what we were trying to do is dead to nuts recreate the feel of that original packaging that you got when you were a kid. That's really the feeling we wanted to inspire. The Star Wars team, and I wasn't on the Star Wars team at that time, took the cue, and they wanted to get something started before Episode 3. So at the end of 2004, they wanted to have their own kind of nostalgic run-up to really get fans really excited, to kind of prime the pump for Episode 3. And they took a page from what we were doing on G.I. Joe and did the vintage original trilogy collection. They did it both. There was a capsule of small subset of 12 figures, plus in the 3 3/4 collection, plus some 12-inch figures as well. And they recreated that packaging pretty much dead to nuts. That was the original genesis for recreating that Kenner, that Kenner magic. Mm-hmm. And when I came on a short while later in the fall of 2004, we started to put plans into place on how to continue that. So back then, we knew that continuing this was going to be very important, but how to do it and what figures to do became a big head scratcher for me. And so I just found my spreadsheet a couple of weeks ago of the original work that I did to justify to Lucasfilm for what became originally finally the vintage collection, which is a figure by figure analysis of what Kenner had done versus what we had, done to that point to modernize in Hasbro. Ultimately, the goal was to try and update every single Kenner figure with a new definitive version, and ideally release them on a vintage card. And it was with that vintage original trilogy collection in 2004, the follow-up that we did a couple years later in our, I think, the anniversary line. So we did another little capsule, and we kind of worked our way towards the eventual launch of the vintage collection. But what the vintage collection did that the previous lines didn't was they went beyond the original trilogy films. They expanded it to the entire saga, the entire universe, including the what was then the expanded universe. So that really opened the door in a big way for the vintage collection to be this open, ongoing assortment that it is today. And that was, I think because of the work we did to kind of, figure by figure upgrade and make definitive versions. And that's what makes the vintage collection so special. They are, we consider them the definitive premium versions, that you'll ever get of those characters and vehicles.
And the guy you got to do the foreword for the book is no slouch either. He certainly is. He's vintage himself, as a matter of fact. Stephen Sansweet.
Yep. So Steve is on board, and interestingly enough, so when Dave and Rich were meeting to kind of figure out the best way to visually, handle the product and the pages, they took their inspiration from Steve's 1999 figure book, which in turn also Steve collaborated with some other collaborators to do that, a Japanese collaborator especially. But we took the inspiration from that because the layout is so nice.
Yeah,
I'm
I'm holding it right here. It's one of my all-time favorite books.
And so we told Steve, we said, look, what we're doing, we think it's the spiritual successor to your book. And he looked at the design. He said, "You're right." And we brought him on board, and he's going to write the foreword for it. So that's kind of a dream come true to have Steve, give his blessing to kind of the new generation of really premium product that we hope to launch at Blue Milk. And I forgot to say, so the Star Wars Vintage Collection Archive Edition is being brought to fans by our new company called Blue Milk. And so that's the three of us. And, we formed the name even before we knew how important Blue Milk was to Star Wars Galaxy's Edge.
Right.
Oh, man, spiked blue milk is that's a wild ride.
Exactly.
But, yeah, Steve Sansweet, he's like he's the patron saint of Star Wars action figures, if you ask me. And his book that came out in 99, The Action Figure Archive, that to me is like having a legitimate Star Wars collection in a book. I mean, it's as close to having a collection or being with your collection, say if you're on the road or something and you're like, oh gosh, I miss my action figures. you travel with the book. Because you're right, the layout and the format is so great, and it has been 20 years. I've been dying to see an updated version of that book, and the vintage collection is primed for that. Now, if I remember correctly, the Action Figure Archive went through the original run all the way up through the Power of the Force 2 line.
Right.
But I don't think it got into any prequel era action figures. Were there other lines that might have been considered as candidates? How did you really settle on the vintage action figure line?
So we know, in talking to fans, we know how much they love the vintage line. But it's interesting, since we launched the book, we've gotten a lot of comments. People, of course, the fans backed this project really quickly. So it was funded within, I think, 24 hours. And as you mentioned, we're now approaching our $150,000 stretch goal. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But since then, a lot of comments have poured in. They've asked us if we could do the same treatment for some other series. And, and it's been fortunate. Some of these series, I helped launch the Black series, the 6-inch series as well, and have seen the power that has.
Thank you for that, by the way.
Yeah, thanks. It was a whole team. I was one of them. But we knew that the power that a whole new, fresh start would have for people, because honestly, the 3 3/4, and the one of the reasons we wanted to do a book in the first place was because it can be, if you love a line, it can be daunting or intimidating to actually, try and collect it all. And so often a book is a great way to start. And plus, it's difficult to get all the information on a line. And the vintage collection just happens to have, enough figures. There's approaching a couple, 200 figures, plus a lot of vehicles, some amazing exclusives. There's a lot, and you don't always find it in one place, but overall, it's a wonderful place to start. Plus, it's a great place to start for a line because of that original tie back to the Kenner packaging. That just made sense to, it was just a powerful connection to, our childhoods. So it's the start, but I think what you're asking is where can we go? And the vision for the company, for Blue Milk, is to create really high quality premium, informational guides for fans. And so we consider this just a start. So it's a great start. We have a lot of work to go to deliver it, but we think that we've got a very strong vision here. It's a beautiful product that people are really going to love, both the book and also the backer pledge goals. We really think people are going to love having this around. And, look forward to what can follow it up.
Tell us about Kim Simmons. This is a guy that is legendary in terms of vintage Star Wars collectibles in the action figure line. If you for those of us that grew up in that time and we're familiar with that sort of mustardy yellow background with all the action figures photographed. I mean, Kim is the guy that did all of that. How did you get him involved with some of these great backer premiums?
So Dave and Rich have known Kim, being photographers themselves, have known Kim for some time, and struck up a friendship and a good relationship. And when we were considering the Backaroo Awards and the stretch goals that we could put in place, it became natural to involve Kim, because Kim's work was so iconic back in the day for us who grew up with Kenner Star Wars. He was the photographer and kind of the master behind that original poster on the yellow background with all the Kenner figures laid out there, as well as a poster that I bought a few years ago, the Star Wars is Forever mail-away poster. That has all of the it's a 1984 poster that has all of the figures up to that point arranged on a background that has several types of terrain on it. So there's sand and earth and forest. So kind of arranged in an environmental way. So Kim did these iconic images, and it made sense to involve him. And one of our backer goals was the recreation of that iconic original yellow poster, and fans loved that. So that was very successful. We sold out of that first backer pledge, but opened in a new open-ended one of those. But as soon as we hit 150,000, which hopefully is very imminent, it's a level that we call the circle is now complete. We'll have Ken actually recreate that Star Wars is Forever mail-away poster, and he'll be using the modern figures and vehicles to do that. And everybody who orders a book will get that stretch goal. So as soon as we hit that 150,000, it's automatically added to every book order, which is super, super exciting. So we're just giving it with our thanks, along with all the other stretch goals that have been previously unlocked as well.
I would imagine one of the challenges in creating a book like this, where you're documenting something that is ongoing, is that you're thinking to yourself, now, by the time we put this out, is it going to be obsolete? I mean, not obsolete, I don't mean that, but out of date in terms of there's still going to be more stuff. Is there talk, or is there a possibility about any kind of supplementation to this down the line?
Well, yeah. So we've thought about that for sure, and we're going to try and get the latest, absolutely the latest information that we can get into the book. That hopefully Hasbro will share with us on on what's coming up, and. But there's always that possibility. The vintage series is something that Hasbro recently restarted. They restarted it after the successful HasLab Katana sail barge, and came out. But ultimately we don't know how long it's going to go and how long it's going to last. But we feel the time is now to celebrate what has gone before, because it is so beloved and so collectible. Basically. And another good reason is a lot of the designers who worked on the vintage line are scattered, around the toy industry, and it won't be before too long before their memories start to fade a little bit too. Mm-hmm. So we wanted to capture the stories while they were fresh, and in fact, that's been so much fun. Getting on the phone and visiting some of the designers to just kind of reminisce, and the stories just flow about how fun it was, how great a time we had. So it's been good, and their memories are sharp. But now is the time to actually record this, because the important thing is it's not just my voice, having been in charge of the brand for so long, but I really want to tell the stories. I consider the designers who work on these lines, to be, the heroes of this story, because so much passion went into the creation of the toys that comprise the vintage collection. And it's not just, I think everybody knows Mark Boudreau and Mark's contributions to the line and the design of the Millennium Falcon, and it's very legendary. But people don't know the other folks who created the basic figures, which make the line, hum, and the other vehicles and the amazing exclusives that were done. So, my goal is to really make sure that everybody knows the contributions of Brian Parrish and Eric Aranya and Andrew Franks and Brian Merton, and these are legendary, legendary designers in my mind. And my goal is to really romance their input. Or Dave Reeves on the packaging,
right. And recreating that, no pressure there. I mean, it's some of the it's talk about iconic. It's burned in our brains, and he had to recreate it, and then in some instances expand it to include films that we had never seen. We didn't know what a Revenge of the Sith logo would look like on a vintage card, and
exactly
and that sort of thing. It's very, very cool. So, with your vantage point, I mean, you were overseeing all of this. Some might be thinking, well, I mean, Derryl knew it all. But were there some surprises along the way? Are you discovering things like, even though you were overseeing some of this stuff that, like, I never knew that.
Absolutely. And my purview, is in marketing is kind of head of the business. I'm not in the trenches all the time with the designers. Certainly certainly I was when it came time to, selecting what we do and making decisions on, where we're going to put the costing, and that's always, a question that comes down to where are tooling dollars going to best be allocated, or do we do soft goods instead of tooling, things like that. So, but the kind of in the trenches decisions that are made by the designers, I don't have visibility to those unless they tell me. And so a lot of those fun stories are coming to light that I just didn't know. They made a decision on like whose head to sculpt, for a certain figure. There's a lot of that goes on, even though it's not supposed to happen. It's kind of taboo that if you're not using a screen accurate likeness, you're supposed to steer away from recognizable likenesses, and too many, so many times designers, put someone they know or maybe even themselves, into a figure. So there's a lot of that and more of that than I thought went on. So we'll all talk about that, and that'll come to light as well.
And is there one figure or two that is in that vintage line that was that might have posed a particular challenge or that you didn't think was ever going to quite get made and it was finally made? Or what are the little victories throughout that line?
Well, it's almost in a way we had so much success doing a lot of lines that preceded the vintage collection, like the 30th anniversary collection and the legacy collection before that. That by the time we got to the vintage collection, I felt like we were playing with house money in a lot of ways. Like, if we wanted to put a Cantina alien in the line, people were going to say, great, you've shown that you can do that before in other lines, successfully, right? It's everybody wants to see Darth Vaders and Luke Skywalkers and R2-D2s everywhere and Boba Fett's, because those are the figures that you could really count on to move a line. Those are the the higher volume figures. Mm-hmm. But I always looked at it as, to me, the heart and soul of Star Wars is, especially for the core, the longtime fan, are those alien denizens, those lived-in personas that George and his team created to populate the world, and so that's why my favorite scenes were always like the Cantina scene on Mos Eisley and later Jabba's palace. So my desire, my vision was always to do as many Cantina aliens as possible.
That's excellent.
As was prudent to do without sinking the line into obscurity. And
please.
But in addition, I liked troop builders, I like droids, I like it all. But it's to keep exploring these new facets and adding to the depth of the characters we already have. And my particular favorite, so long answer to a short question, my particular favorite figure that I was so happy we got to do was a character named Bomb Vinden in Vintage. And Brian Parrish did the design for this one, and he just absolutely nailed it. It's just so good. And, every time we're able to do one of these, new Cantina figures, I just felt, when I finally held it in my hand, I was so happy. It brought me back to seriously the feeling I had when I had my Kenner Cantina playset, which is one of the first Star Wars toys I ever got under the Christmas tree, and
absolutely,
and all those aliens that would populate that, and Luke would come into the Cantina, and be surrounded by this strange mix. So those are my particular favorites. Whenever we're able to do something that no one else recognizes except the core fan, I figured that was a victory, and it was due to a lot of hard work.
That is a big victory. And Derryl, I hope some of your colleagues over at Hasbro might be listening to this, because I loved what you said about the Cantina aliens. To me, they are the most attractive collectibles. And I think a lot of opportunity was missed with the Episode 8 rollout, where all of those great aliens and creatures at Canto Bight were ignored by the toy line. Not a single character from that sequence was turned into a toy. And that was, in my opinion, the most toy-centric scene in the entire movie. So I hope people at Hasbro are listening. That's a suggestion from a hardcore collector. Now, turn back the clock. Here's another hardcore collector question for you. Where's Kitster?
So I wanted to do Kitster. So Kitster and Wald would have been a perfect 2-pack.
Perfect.
Actually, I don't think we ever did Wald either, did we?
No.
So that it was talked about as a 2-pack. It might have even made it into what we called the parking lot at one time, which is a big spreadsheet of all the ideas and characters that we could do, and it was always in there for consideration. I remember, I think we actually had a very passionate. There was a website moderator who might have been Dan Curto, I'm not sure, from Rebel Scum, who always was advocating for Kitster and Wald, like every time.
Curto. It was Curto. We were feeding him that.
You were feeding him that. Okay.
We were feeding Curto the Where's Kitster, the Kitster Wald 2-pack.
It would have been a pretty good one, wouldn't it? But that underscore. By the time you get down to, let me tell you, when you're creating a line, there's a magic element to it. It's like, how many of these more obscure characters can I fit in, but they have to be balanced by those characters that are going to kind of pay the bills, right? The Vaders of the world. And so you can only do so many in a year. And unfortunately, you just run out of daylight, for these in any given year. So they keep getting relegated, and finally, people move on and forget about Kitster and Wald, and you're on to something else. Like you say, now the fight is, can we get a Canto Bight alien, right?
Right. I think so. I think, like I said, very toy-centric moment in the film.
Right. Emphasis, yes, exactly.
Now, Derryl,
on the toy play.
We are about to right one of the great wrongs of our careers as podcasters here, because when we had you on the program before, the old show that we used to do, we never gave you our Yoda Questionnaire, and it was actually quite popular at that time on the show. And this, you got to get in the Wayback Machine for this, because the kids today, they don't even remember Inside the Actors Studio, but I'm sure you do.
Sure.
And
James Corden was that?
James Lipton.
James Lipton. Yeah.
Who's James Corden?
Yeah, he's the British guy now, and this is a guy that pretends to be British, James Lipton. And he used to ask all these actors these great questions about their craft. And we kind of created a Star Wars version. We've lovingly called it the Yoda Questionnaire.
Because Yoda actually compiled these questions.
Yeah, he did.
It's in universe and canon.
Yeah.
Of course.
Completely.
Because that's what Yoda would do.
Yeah, of course.
Right. Hey, 900 years. You got to pass the time some way.
Got a lot of time on his hands.
So we're going to ask you a few of these questions here. And the first is, what is your favorite Star Wars line? In all the films, what's your favorite line?
Oh.
You could say quote, maybe.
Yeah. I was always partial to... well, it's two lines because one completes the other, but I love you and I know.
There you go. All right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, there's so many you can't do that.
But that's a great one, and that's one that you have to credit Harrison Ford with, because he at least partially, legend has it, he improv that line.
He improv that one, and it defines his character so perfectly. So kudos to Harrison on that one.
Sure. He really understood who Han Solo was. All right, do you have a least favorite line? Is there a line that you hear and it makes you cringe?
Well, I still don't like the concept of midichlorians. As much as I actually do like Episode 1, I think there's a lot of great stuff in Episode 1. Whenever I actually am watching it, and Qui-Gon, draws his blood sample to count midichlorians or whatever he does,
pulls out his iPhone, sends in the results.
Right. I cringe because I'm like, this is like a little bit of a fourth wall breaking thing for me. You didn't need to explain the Force. We got it. We understood it was this incredible thing, and now it's kind of tied to biology. It's kind of like, mitochondria, which is in everybody's cells, right? I mean, that was kind of, making it a basic biological thing that I thought didn't need to happen. So for me, and my former background before I became a toy guy was a scientist, and I'm like, I don't need a scientific basis for the Force. So it's kind of that. That's my least favorite thing.
Here, Derryl, let me help you out here. I think you are looking at it too scientifically. What you have to understand is the midichlorians, they aren't the Force. They're not representative of the Force, but they're just merely a conduit for the Force to flow into the individual. And the Jedi have discovered a way to test with their technology certain individuals to see how strong they may be in the Force. But by measuring their midichlorians, they're not actually checking them for like volume of the Force. The Force flows through everything. It's the midichlorians that conduct them and amplify them depending on how prevalent they are within a natural being.
Wow, that was almost as entertaining as the political fights on the Senate floor there in Episode 1.
That was pretty good, but let me do I get does the defense defense goes last. So I get to read.
Jason's the one who said this was a courtroom this is not a Senate hearing. This is a conversation among Star Wars fans.
Exactly. This is what we do. When I originally fell under the spell of Star Wars, and Luke is my favorite character of the franchise. And when I originally watched Star Wars in the theater, I just believed. That's all you needed to do. You just believed it with determination and perseverance, and because Luke, he practiced for maybe a day, right? On board the Millennium Falcon.
Time in Star Wars is
right. He was a quick learner, and I always felt that could be me. It's kind of like I could be Luke, and I have the willpower to do that. And that's all I needed to know. I didn't need to know that somebody else is, more predisposed to have a higher level of Force aptitude than I do because of their biology. I wanted to believe it was something else. It was some mystical thing that had to do with, belief and the ability to, attune yourself to something. So anyway, just to reduce it to a number, I felt didn't do the mythology justice. Right, because it didn't need to be explained.
I'm on Team Derryl on this one. But Jimmy, you gave it a really great try. You really
No,
did.
and you know what? I get it too, and I think I just remain flexible on the topic. That's about it.
You're force flexible. I like it.
Yes,
for sure.
That's good. And Jimmy, your argument was great. I actually pulled me off. Pulled me back. So I appreciate
from
that.
the brink. All right. So, what Star Wars moment makes you smile? No matter how many times you see it or hear it, it always puts a smile on your face.
So many. Geez, I don't think there's any single one. It's just so many great moments, stacked on top of one another. One of the, it's, Han shooting Greedo and then the team, making a beeline to the Millennium Falcon after that, to me is one of the, kind of pivotal turning moments. I love that scene every time. The original one when Han shoots first, not the,
right.
Not any of the altered versions that come after that, because it's just so perfect, in so many ways.
It's like right out of a classic Western,
Well, again, so you're a Han Solo guy because you've laid out two of the most defining moments of his character and his personality that get revealed in the original trilogy. Shooting Greedo first tells us Han's a badass and not to be trifled with. And the I love you, I know is, hey, he is being dropped into the carbon freezing pit. So even in the face of doom and destruction, he's still a cocky bastard. We love him for it.
That's right. Although I'm more of a Luke guy, Luke as my favorite character, but like you say, I mean, the other thing I love about Star Wars, it was just this, these characters found a crazy family aboard the Millennium Falcon. A family that consisted of all these people thrown together against the fate of the galaxy, that consisted of, farm boys, smugglers, princesses, droids, big dogs. It's like it was magic, and they're all part of it. And Han, of course, being the more adult, the most adult part of it at all, or the most seasoned, you might say.
The big brother.
Yeah, the big brother. He was definitely the most seasoned. He's been through the most. He's jaded and he knows everything. There's, he's just such a core part of it.
I would consider, Derryl, in all seriousness, if I had to write a list of the 5 coolest jobs in the world, your job at Hasbro would be, I think, in the top 5. I can't imagine, for me, I can't imagine having a cooler job. And I love the job that I have. I love my day job. But that's an incredible thing. If you were living in the Star Wars universe, what job would you most like to have? If you think about all the different career options, the ice cream guy on Cloud City.
Wow, that's a good one. I have never thought about that before. Actually, what would I do if I were in the Star Wars universe?
Rancor trainer. I mean, the
definitely wouldn't be. I don't think I'd want to be a member of a criminal syndicate or, I would probably be a member of the rebellion because that is
Rebel.
that is my nature.
By the way, the pay is not great there for Rebel.
Yeah.
The pay's not real good, but you don't do it for the money.
And spoiler alert, according to, episode 8, the survival rate isn't very high either. So
apparently not. There's like 4 people left.
Are there that many?
I don't know.
So apparently all these other planets from episode 7 that got wiped out, or the systems that got wiped out from the Starkiller Ray, those were all the members of the rebellion. There is nobody else.
No.
Right?
Well, Lando,
of the Republic.
Lando's going to show up here in a few months.
That's right. So maybe he'll bring the cavalry. So I would probably be somewhere in the rebellion. Hopefully I will have worked my way up the ranks. So I'm a, trusted advisor in the lead. One of those guys that stands off to the side in the briefing room, not in the pilot's seat.
Yes, just looking very official. Nodding a lot,
Nodding, hands folded behind the back.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to flip it on you here. And what job would you most dislike to have? What job would you most not want to have in the Star Wars?
Definitely.
What would be the worst?
Oh, man. Cleaning up the dewback poop. That has to be a really bad job.
That's rough.
Yeah. It's rough. I mean, you look at some of those, we used to call one of the sand troopers that we did, or I think fans called them as like the pooper trooper or something like that. He was so muddied, because we did these different versions of sand troopers that just had mud splattered on them. It's like, how do you get that bad? And then one of my friends in the 501st, he just took to cosplaying a sand trooper whose uniform was just covered with dewback poop. And that was it. He said, look, you're out there in the desert. This guy, you depend on this thing. It's like, somebody's got to clean up the dewback poop. So,
well, maybe there's a lot of mushrooms growing on it, and he's a lot of fun at the 501st parties.
So that I thought that was just a hilarious way to embrace that. But
for sure.
But no.
All right, last question. This is the big one, okay? James Lipton, he likes to invoke God in his final question. We're going to invoke the notorious GL, George Lucas, in this question. He's going to be our substitute for the big man. So if another Star Wars movie was to be made, now that's at one time this was a hard thing to imagine. Not so hard now, but let's say another Star Wars movie has been greenlit by Lucasfilm. George is coming back to direct it. You're in it. He says, "Oh, Derryl, that DePriest guy from Hasbro," and you're in it. What would you like him to say to you after he said "cut" on your last scene? So there you are. You're on the set. You deliver your final scene. George goes, "Cut." What would you like to hear him say to you?
Ooh, wow. I don't even have an answer for that one. That's fantastic.
One, right?
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Nailed it, DePriest. Something like that, right?
Nailed it. People are going to want to see more Mandalorians after that performance.
Mandalorian. Oh, all right.
That's a good one.
You're tipping your hand there a little bit.
I'm tipping my hand. Well,
listen, Derryl, Derryl was an action figure. You were in the Mandalorian multi-pack.
That's right.
Yeah. What was the name of your Mando?
Dread Priest.
Dread Priest. That is such a badass name for a Mandalorian. and refresh my memory. Like, what was his color scheme?
So his color scheme was black and red. I think a little bit of brown. We may have changed the colors around, but that was it. And then Karen Travis actually wrote me into one of her Mando novels as well. So I got to become a character in the universe. Now it's all the legacy universe. But I might have to amend my prior answer on who I would be. I think I would be. I'd have to be a Mandalorian. So instead of in the Resistance, but a good Mando. A Mando with a heart.
Yes, yes. He steals from the rich and gives to the poor.
That's right.
He's
That's right.
The Robin Hood Mando, Dread Priest. Hey, here's what George would say to you after cut is said on your final scene. He'll come up to you and he'll be like, "Spin off," and then that's it. He walks away.
Yeah. Then you get your Disney Plus show.
Yeah, but then he burns you and hires someone else to play Dread Priest. The casting director is no friend. Sorry to be a bummer about it, but that's just what I see in my Star Wars crystal ball right now. I'm so...
Oh, I must have lost you guys for a little while.
Oh, you missed the best part. You missed the best part of the show, and you're just going to... Yeah, you'll hear it on the podcast.
I'm sorry about that,
that's
fellas.
All right. Believe me, when you hear it, you'll howl.
Yeah.
What happened?
Oh, I think it was just a little glitch. Skype gods. That's what happens.
A little something we call Skyper activity.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
But anyway, the book is Star Wars, the Vintage Collection Archive Edition. You have to get it. We have so many collectors listening to this show. And as Jimmy said, if you're new to collecting and this line goes back for more than a decade, it can be a really expensive thing to go back and try to pick some of these up. This is the next best thing. You can get this book, the photography. If you go to the Kickstarter page, you get a sense of what the photography is going to be like. It's beautiful. You get full 360 photos of each figure Daryl's giving the behind-the-scenes story of each one, close-ups on the weapons, the card backs. It's all there, and some amazing backer incentives. You just got to check it out. We'll have the link up on our Facebook page as well as on the show post, I'm sure. Or just go to Kickstarter.com and search for Star Wars Vintage Collection. It's awesome. Darryl, you really are. You're a legend, man. Thank you so much for everything you've done over the years for Star Wars collectors. And, it's a thankless job because all we do is bitch and complain about everything. Yeah. But yet we still buy it all, and we still got it all. So,
I love the fans, and that's why it's great they've backed the book. And what we're doing, actually, I will say one more thing. We added, in response to fan demand, we added a super cool stretch goal at 175,000. So, if we pass the 150, then the next one is a 175. We're actually going to recreate some Power of the Force aluminum coins. Those commemorative coins that were packed in that were never made. So we're going to make a set of 3 of those. One for the Slave One for Jabba the Hutt, and there's never been a Jabba coin. Great. And then another one for the Katana sail barge. Yes! And those would be amazing. So that's our goal at 175. So awesome. I will say,
let's make this happen. Make it happen, listeners. Make it happen.
Exactly.
Right now, as we're recording this show, they're at 142,509.
Wow! Congrats.
Yeah, that's great. And I just hit refresh. Yep, 142,509. With more than 1,100 backers. I'd like to see it at least get to 1,138 backers. That would be fun. You're at 1,128. So maybe the 1,138th backer gets something real special. But 18 days to go.
Jason's going to manage.
Yeah, I'm just making up stuff for the campaign. That's not official. I just thought it'd be fun. But truly, Darryl, thank you so much. And I cannot wait to get the book this December.
Wonderful. Thank you, fellas.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thanks. Bye.
All right, bye-bye.
Chewie, get us out of here! Rebel Force Radio.